Here is Stefania Cassini, and you're watching Without Your Hat.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by Nathalie Biancheri, writer and director of Wolf, which is opening Friday. Very cool.
Hi.
Hi. So I noticed in like a Q&A that you mentioned the story was inspired by you were actually looking into animal dysphoria. And so you were going to do a documentary first, and instead you go with a fictionalized film. So how did you go from that, though, to decide, like, I'm going to set it in the hospital? Was it always going to be that way, or was it going to be like a bigger movie? Not necessarily a bigger movie, but you know what I mean.
Well, you know, the thing is, like, when I kind of very briefly dabbled with the idea of like potentially making a documentary, it was because I found this syndrome, which I knew nothing about, like, fascinating. But what I also realized is, like, I wasn't, you know, let's say, interested as a filmmaker in making a film about species dysphoria as a condition in 2021, but rather there were themes that it opened up, which for me were interesting. So I kind of parked that and decided to just enter like pure fiction and not place it in a context, in a world that we could necessarily like relate or know for sure, is this our world? What space is this? But rather kind of almost suspend it in a limbo. And I knew also that there were sort of two ideas really that I wanted to kind of bring up in the film. One, of course, is this sort of overarching theme of, you know, self-realization, which is, of course, the most predominant and evident, and it's Jacob's character who embodies that. But also the other characters who, again, it's very free for interpretation, but I don't feel necessarily all feel that they're the animal that they are in the same way, and perhaps are performing slightly or have had a need, and I don't mean performing in a derogative way at all, but rather have projected their own needs or traumas or personal life experiences, or simply can't cope with the world and society, and so have found refuge in an animal persona. And for me, that tension in the film between these two different kind of questions about identity, and different ways, in a way, of wearing a mask, because Jacob, who really feels he's a wolf, is almost wearing a human mask. And I think some of the other characters, even Wildcat, like, you know, puts on maybe more of a feline persona for Jacob. That is and actually some
wear costumes, and yeah. Well, I like that we said about almost he has the human mask, because there's a really good scene when they're trying to like laugh in therapy, and he really comes off as someone pretending to be human, as opposed to, he doesn't even know how to laugh. He's trying to, play it up for everyone there.
Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting, like with George, like, and for me, such a different like way to approach a character, especially as like quite like a sort of like, cerebral filmmaker, which was with him, it was like, okay, we have to forget about preconceptions of like, why this and why that, and rather like jump in with finding out what it means to feel that you're a wolf, and start with movement and start with, senses and like where those instincts come, and then from there work backwards and discover the boy. So that was like, hugely fascinating as well. And just a very, very, very challenging, very different way of working.
When did you know he was right for Jacob? It's hard to imagine someone else playing.
Impossible, isn't it? Like, it's, I mean, I guess, the thing is with a character like Jacob, for me, he was always a mystery. like completely, like, you know, even, and again, it's sort of unusual because normally your lead character, you think you know them fully. And actually, when I met George, I was like, look, I'm going to be honest, like, I don't really know this guy. You know, he's also a mystery to me. So I think with George, the incredible thing is like, I just felt that he was someone who was really willing to go there and to like accept the question marks that I had and that the film had inherently and build the character. And, you know, George created Jacob as much as I did, you know, like we really created him together in the process, like, again, more than anything I've ever done. And so I think, you know, I felt that he was right. There was an instinct that he was right. There was an instinct that he's a super, obviously talented actor and like willing to work on it and like an incredibly nice guy. But, you know, the answer came in the process, really.
Does that change the script or like the film you're making at all? Like if you're actually, you know, thinking of like who he actually is while you're filming the movie?
Yeah, like in certain things it does. Like obviously I think, you know, we stuck to the script in most things, but like, you know, George brought a lot because he's such an immersive actor. And he, you know, with the diary scene, for example, like he was writing his own diary.
Oh, wow.
Because again, like you have to imagine, like it is a pretty difficult role. Like it's like quite like a stretch, especially like because I wanted to make it so, you know, real, like it, despite it being like kind of a concept and everything. And so George, like apart from the fact that he like would draw up the anatomy of wolves and kind of like, you know, diary entries and like, and I had a diary entry that I'd written myself, but again, like I wasn't that character. So when he wrote his, it was just so much better. You know, it was just like, I was like, this is truthful, you know, and this is more truthful than what I've written. And so that became, you know, the entry that we see in the film.
Yeah. I mean, the movie wouldn't work if you wasn't like so committed to the role and really everyone in the movie.
Agreed.
And it's weird because I always think comedy is best played if it's played really straight, but this is also played really straight. So you still have to balance it so it doesn't, you know, it could easily become a parody or something, but it doesn't at all.
I mean, this obviously, like, this was like a huge fear I had, you know, because I knew that I did not want to like parodize or judge or, you know, mock any of these characters. Like I adore those characters, like each and every one of them. Like, and I think they're just so different. And they're like, the reason that they're in there and the reason that they like exist is so different. But obviously you don't really have the time to tell all of those stories. So I think the only thing I felt I could do was just be as like truthful and work very closely with each character, you know, like something that we did was like, I would write them emails, you know, to like as their like parent or someone outside of the clinic and have them respond to me, like just like, again, it's like kind of stuff we did in rehearsal in their character, just so that we could constantly, like, aside from rehearsals or improvs, like in every level, like dig into things. And you just discovered like so much stuff, you know, and I discovered more about them, like, or would feed into little things like with German Shepherd, you know, like he sent me like a super long email about like everything, like full of kind of lies. Like I got the gold star and I did this and I did that. And like, I thought, you know what, his mom like actually doesn't care. And so I was like, yeah, that's great. Like with a typo, like, you know, and then like sent from my iPhone, you know, and so just all those little things that inform each character. And I think, I hope, you know, if people do feel that the film is sort of truthful to each one, it's because there was so much like love and care given to them.
Mm-hmm. How did you come up with like the actual look of the clinic? Because it's very sterilized and very, I like the look too. It kind of comes off like a zoo because you got the tree. That's like a fake habitat for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of influences there because there was the fact that, like, first of all, like, you know, limitations, and limitations always create like the final result. And that was, you know, we're filming in Ireland. Our budget was small because it's actually a very indie film, despite the cast, and we couldn't create things from scratch. So like it was finding the institution and stuff. And I knew from a photographer that I love, I had in mind like a sort of post-Soviet, like general kind of aesthetic idea. So then when I found this space, which was an old disused hotel with all this glass and like taking pictures, like suddenly I was like, oh, okay, there's elements like almost of an aquarium here, you know, and like, again, like places of observation. And then like with the DP, like he went to a zoo in Poland and just took loads of pictures, and we're like, oh, like, look, it's quite interesting, like, you know, using like bits of like fake bark and stuff. But also, like, again, I often went back to those images of this photographer Gronsky, you know, who had those birch trees and stuff. And so then it was like marrying that with, well, how would this institution actually, they wouldn't want to have real trees. They wouldn't want to, it would be plastic. So a fusion of like necessities of place, necessities of script, and just images that struck me in the process.
Well, maybe that in a weird way that could work for the movie too, because the clinic itself probably has, you know, out of necessity, they only have access to certain types of fake trees and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Everyone has to deal with budgets, even crazy clinics.
Exactly. So I had this in my notes, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, but like, especially near the end, I started to really think like, what world is this? Because there's a lot of little like lines, like, you know, what happens to girls like you out there. And it was like, you know, is this like a weird futuristic world? So how much did you think of that? Like the actual outside world, the universe that this is taking place in?
Well, let me ask you, like, what was the conclusion that you drew? Like, did you feel like what did you have an answer for yourself or not?
Well, it's interesting because I don't think there would be that many people in there if this was just, you know, a traditional world. So, but then there's also obviously they want to keep people in there, and so they want to make them paranoid of, you know, you can't leave here because you know, something bad will happen to you. So it's it was a lot of mixed things. And also, I don't know if you've ever seen George Romero's Martin, but that's how I kind of thought of Jacob's character, because in that one, you never know if he's really a vampire or if it's, you know, he just thinks he is, he's convinced he is. And that's how kind of I saw Jacob, where maybe he really is, you know, the wolf or whatever.
I think you've answered that as well as I could answer that question.
But I like movies where you know, it doesn't hit you over the head what to think. You know, it leaves it up to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That was definitely the intention.
Along those lines, is that fun when you're at a festival and people have different ideas, theories of what they think the movie means?
Yeah, I think like, you know, I think it's a film, I think, which definitely like divides people and like people take like very, very different things. Of course, you know, most people see it as sort of like, you know, definitely just a kind of, you know, the overarching theme of it being about self-realization and sort of being true to your identity and kind of, you know, the, let's say, and drawbacks is sort of saying it lightly, of like institutionalization and using violence or any kind of method of coercion to sort of stop who you are. And that's, of course, a huge part of the film. But I think also people have questioned like other elements, like, which is, you know, who are the other characters, you know, like aside from Jacob, like, you know, German Shepherd, for example, like wants to, ultimately he does return, you know, and he, to a certain extent, makes a choice to return. Or like Parrot does wear a costume. Like, does she feel the same about her character as Jacob does? You know, does she really think she's a parrot? And if she doesn't, like, what about wearing a parrot costume makes her feel sort of safe somehow? So I think what's, you know, like interesting to me and like, you know, I'm very happy about is that I think people like pick up on different things and notice different things and realize that it isn't just one sort of thread, one question about identity. There's a few things, you know, it is like hopefully a multi-layered sort of exploration of our world.
Not even just identity, but you know, connection with other people, which, you know, you have to accept your identity and their identity.
Yes.
You've probably been asked this a lot of times, but would you have a specific animal that you would identify with?
Not asked as often as you would think.
Oh, really?
But I do have my answer, which wasn't what I thought it would have been like a couple of years ago. Because I love cats, and my company is called Feline Films. In general, I love animals. Like, you know, took a lot of joy from making this film. But I've realized probably like I'm more of a fish or a seal.
Really? Okay. How did you come upon that?
Well, the truth is I love swimming like so much. Like I find huge solace like in the water and just being able to kind of like submerge the universe. And then I think, but then I also thought like, so initially I was like, a fish, and when I was doing the improvs with the actors, like I also kind of jumped in with them and like, we did like, we also exchanged animals and stuff. And at first I was like a fish, but then when I was in the hotel in Ireland, like we had this beautiful beach and there were seals across from us and all these seals were just chilling out. And I was like, oh yeah, they're very interesting seals because they're able to be on land, but also in the water. And they're like, both like, I think very approachable and sweet, but also like pretty fierce. And I was like, yeah, I dig that. Like I could be a seal. I could definitely.
I'm glad it's well thought out. Yeah. So Wolf opens Friday. It's playing. I've seen it, but I'm actually going to see it again on the big screen because it's playing in Boston near me. So that's very exciting. Where can people go to see, like, if they can find out, if it's playing near them?
Google. I don't know.
Go to the website. I'm sure you can find it. Yeah, Fandango, any place. Yeah,
it's opening. I think we're at like 308 screens. So that's
nice.
We're super super happy that we're having this response, and yeah. Go and watch the film, guys. Yeah. It will definitely be a different experience.
Yeah, I loved it, and not just because you're here, but yeah, I really like it. Cool. It was very nice to talk with you.
You too. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.